Good evening. I'm Barb Quijada with Valley Unitarian Universalist Association and VIP.
Hello, I'm Alex Wood with Chandler Education Association. Our first question is, earlier you heard stories about students whose needs are not being met due to a shortage of teachers, paraprofessionals, and other essential school staff members. If elected, what would be your strategy for recruiting and retaining teachers, paraprofessionals, and other staff? Ms. Scala?
Yes, thank you. Well, when I look at this question, I look at the fact that we don't actually have a teacher supply issue. Really, the teacher and support staff are leaving the profession because they're overworked and undervalued. So that's causing the work staff shortage. So the first step is to look at changing our pay structure. But from my understanding, currently the teacher pay is structured based on years of service, degrees, and certifications with the occasional stipend thrown in. And that's not enough. So anything a teacher or para does on campus outside of their regular role before or after work hours, or as I'm hearing you all speak about the paras outside of your regular para role as well, that really is an additional role that should be compensated. So stipends for IEPs, 504s, literacy coaching, working with your curriculum specialist at the IRC, things like that. All of those are additional duties. And they should have compensation already built into the pay structure. And those are things that we need to look at, creative solutions that we need to look at for our staff. I also really believe we need to look at our business model, because right now there's one path for significant wage advancement in the field of teaching, and it's to leave the classroom and go into administration. And I feel that's short-sighted. We want to keep the best teachers in the classroom. So a main goal of mine, if elected, will be to look at how we create a second career path to keep our master teachers in and around the classroom and to compensate them accordingly. And then finally, Dr. Brad Johnson noted recently that few teachers will leave an environment, and paraprofessionals as well, where they feel valued, supported, appreciated, and treated like professionals. So we have to create a culture in CUSD where this is the case. So I'm committed to working with the teachers, the administration, but also our community to build that culture.
Thank you, Ms. Scala. Ms. Estes?
Wait. She's still muted.
Oh. Ms. Estes, if you could turn your microphone on, please.
Sorry about that. Okay, now?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, support. CUSD has a long history of excellence. I believe this to be true in large part because of the quality of instruction that has been provided by past and present CUSD teachers and support staff. But unless the governing board, CEA, administration, teachers, and parents come together immediately to develop a plan to keep our current staff intact and stem the tide of teacher attrition, CUSD will soon just become another mediocre district. The key to this plan's success is discovering why so many teachers, paraprofessionals, and support staff do not feel they have the support they need to mitigate the demands of the profession, resulting in their choosing to leave the district and/or teaching altogether. Once a plan to keep our current staff on board is developed, the governing board must address a plan to recruit for the coming years. Ideally, the best recruiters for future staff will be current staff who can speak to the reasons why they have chosen to remain with CUSD at a time when other districts are struggling to find staff. I am also deeply concerned about the negative cumulative effect of the underfunding of public education in the state of Arizona. Unfortunately, despite the efforts of many school boards across the state, including CUSD, quite a few of our state leaders are okay with current funding formula. Teachers and support staff deserve to do better compensated considering the enormous importance of the work they do with our children. With that said, I do believe a sense of accomplishment, respect for work done, being listened to and heard are very powerful enticements for teachers to continue in the profession. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Brunner?
There we go. Thank you. So this is something that's been close to my heart for many years. Over the last 5 years or so, I've been working at the site where I am currently a teacher in Tempe Union for this topic. I've done professional development on beating burnout, and currently I am teaching 3/5 in the morning, and in the afternoons I am the retention and engagement coordinator at Tempe Union. So this is definitely something, and I proposed this position to my district to try to help stem the tide of folks leaving. We have to look at compensation. That's number one. Once you have a level of compensation where people feel that they can meet their needs, then we look at some of the other things like job responsibilities, and are they achievable with the resources and time that people are given? This is the number one thing that I think is the weakness for all teachers. We need more supports in the schools. Many school districts have done early release Wednesdays, and I've been trying to push from behind the scenes to make that happen for teachers so they have time to meet with their PLCs. I've been working on substitutes. We need to make sure we have enough substitutes so people are not having to cover during their preps. And all of this helps to contribute to being able to do your job in the time that you're given with the resources that you're given. We also need to have teachers feel like they've been heard. So we need to have state interviews and at least one survey a year where people are feel free to share with what would improve their situation, what's going to make a difference for them. They need to feel like they have autonomy and voice and decision-making at their sites. And we need to have connection and support from the community, administration, and their voice in decisions.
Thank you, Ms. Brunner. Ms. Serrano.
Good evening, everyone. Well, as I knock on doors to connect with our CUSD families, I hear very similar stories. One mom shared her pain and story on how one of her children thrives at one of our gifted schools, while her other child in our special education program is not granted the same support and opportunities. This is a heavy weight. As we head into our last month before fall break, my son has yet to have a stable 8th grade ELA teacher this year. Clearly, we have a problem. First and foremost, we must center our current employees and commit to open dialogue to ensure we are creating and sustaining an environment where all feel welcome, valued, and respected. We must listen and take concerns seriously. Doing so fosters a healthy work environment that organically attracts talent by creating passive referrals. I'd also like to see investment in a formal referral program with incentives. Personal referrals and storytelling are compelling. Testimonies from veteran and new teachers, paras, and staff sharing on what positives keep them in CUSD or what brought them to CUSD should be highlighted. Our overburdened workers need support. I fully support the idea of establishing a mentorship program between veteran and new CUSD educators while compensating for this important effort. Having transparent, peer support not tied to merit or evaluations from administration is valuable. It also helps foster a sense of community and fellowship. I also look forward to working with the City of Chandler in coordinating efforts. This might look like finding and creating affordable housing for our educators. And of course, we must work on providing our teachers, paras, and staff with the necessary resources to succeed, including competitive salaries, professional development opportunities, and access to the latest technology. Only by working together will we successfully address this problem.
Thank you, Ms. Serrano. Mr. Roars.
Hello. One of the things I'm thinking about as I hear these responses, that we need to understand very clearly why people leave the district. There's a lot of speculation, but I'd like to see something a little more comprehensive, because if we really don't clearly understand the problem, we're not going to be able to effectively address it. Now, that being said, the things that I do hear out there is, of course, pay. I think a district's done a fairly good job of catching up in the 20 by 20, another 7% raise here this year, but I don't think it's always about money. A lot of it is working conditions in the classroom. And I think we need to go back and recenter about what we're really trying to do here in the district. Everything that the district administration does centers around one thing, and that's a teacher in a classroom teaching a student. I think we need to start there first and decide how we're going to allocate our resources to best support that one central goal. Second thing is that I hear the talk about respect for teachers, and that's very understandable, but also that the administration backs them up, particularly in disciplining issues in the classroom. You can have one kid disrupt the class and then 25 kids don't learn. And I think we need to take that a lot more seriously. We have to look out for the rights of the other 25 kids in the classroom and the rights of the teacher to follow her lesson plan and get her job done. So last thing, workload. Class sizes is something we need to really keep an eye on and come to an agreement on. One thing that I think is an overlooked resource is getting parents back in the classrooms. Parent volunteers are free, and they're more than happy to come and help a teacher out in the classroom to cover some of the things that they can handle, where the teacher handles more difficult issues, and particularly with the paras. And I've been in para classes. Some of those kids need one-on-one attention, and having one paraprofessional and a teacher in there is just not enough. You may need 3, 4, 5 of those.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Roars. Your time is up. Thank you. So we'll go on to the second question. The Arizona Constitution includes a spending cap that limits how much the state can spend on education. Last year, school districts would have had to cut 80% of their remaining budgets for the year when the legislature waited until the last moment to pass a one-year exemption to the spending cap. This year, the legislature has again approved a budget that exceeds the cap, meaning that schools will not be allowed to spend the money that has already been budgeted to them. The district will be facing a huge fiscal cliff if the legislature fails to lift the aggregate expenditure limit by March 1st. Our question to the candidates is, do you commit to advocating at the state level to lift the spending cap this year? And what might that advocating look like? Ms. Estes, we'll begin with you. You're muted. I'm sorry, you're still muted.
There we go. The state constitution of Arizona needs to be changed by doing away with AEL, or the spending cap, so that districts do not face this dilemma year after year. I have worked closely with pro-education candidates who have attempted to address this problem. One state legislator with whom I currently work introduced a bill last year to override the cap for the 2021-22 budget. Her efforts were successful. This exemption vote will need to occur again this year, which I support wholeheartedly. This process will continue year after year unless the state constitution is amended, which is my preferred solution. And the question was, do I commit to advocating at the state level? Absolutely, I do.
Thank you. Ms. Bruner.
There we go. Thanks. So absolutely, I also support removal of the spending cap limit. It was created in 1980, and it did not include the Prop 301 money that was passed by voters in the year 2000, but just recently when the state legislature made that their own bill. it now is included, and this is the main reason why we're going over it now. And also we've added some supports for school facilities that were missing for years. So those are the two main issues. And really, I think the reason why we still have it is because it distracts everyone and keeps them from being able to focus on the other issues that we can be addressing. And so I think if we could get rid of this, then we wouldn't have this argument to battle, and we'd have energy to battle all the other things we need to work hard for. For example, providing an equitable pay so that there is not a 68-cent equity gap between teachers and other folks with the same degrees. This is a huge problem in Arizona, and we're taking some small steps towards that, but we'll never be able to make larger steps until we get rid of the aggregate expenditure limit. Some of the things we've done as a board member, we do have some lobbyists and folks from ASBA, and we promote different issues on what our priorities are. And so this is certainly one of those, as well as special ed weight funding and some other pieces that we need to put in place for the aggregate expenditure limit. To not be a barrier anymore to all these different things that are so important that we do for our students.
So you're working with the board to do that. Is there anything specifically that they haven't done that you would push them to do?
Certainly working with our legislators that are willing to talk with us. But that is up to them. We can't control what they're willing to do with us. But as was mentioned by Ms. Estes, Ms. Pollack has always been wonderful in talking with us and considering our issues.
Thank you. Ms. Serrano, you need to unmute.
Oh,
There
there
you
it goes.
You're ready.
Sorry, everyone. My answer is yes. There exists no doubt that I am fully committed to advocating for the repeal of the aggregate expenditure cap. This limit has undoubtedly hindered our state's ability to properly invest in education. Arizona continues to rank at the very bottom in education funding. It's past time for us to lift this spending cap in order to make the investments necessary to move our state forward. I believe that by repealing the aggregate expenditure cap, we will be able to increase funding for education and better meet the needs of our schools. As evidenced by my direct advocacy this last spring in approving the override on the cap, I would continue to use my voice as a proud public school mom, advocate, and state constituent in calling for repealing this limit. This would include working with our state officials, as I've done in the past, ensuring they honor the will of the people they represent by investing in our public schools and supporting the elimination of this cap. I would also participate, as I have in the past, in collective actions in support of this repeal. We've seen that done through our past standouts and public rallies. I would attend committee hearings on the matter and provide public comment in support of lifting the cap whenever possible. Moreover, I would do my best to organize others to do the same until we get past that finish line.
Thank you, Ms. Serrano. Mr. Roars, be sure you unmute.
Thank you very much. Well, my first question is, why did we have an aggregate spending limit? And my impression is that it was a taxpayer protection initiative. Now, I'm not a union member, as several of the other candidates here are. So, I cannot just advocate for union issues. I have to balance those off against the taxpayers that we have, and of course, parents as well. So I think the approach is not necessarily the spending limit, but it's reform of the formulas that we use for funding. They're very, very complicated. A lot of times funds are locked up for districts where they could be spent elsewhere, and we need to release those. The other part to that is that different districts have different needs, and that's part of being able to unlock those funds so they could use them in different places. So I think it's more about spending restrictions than it is about the aggregate limit. Thank you.
So I understand that at this point, you're saying that you would not commit to advocate for lifting that spending cap?
I think it forces them to reform the formulas for spending. And I think I want to have that pressure on the legislature to do that.
So keep the cap and have pressure in other ways.
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Gala, please.
So what I find most interesting about the aggregate expenditure limit is that it's not a budget issue. So the state legislature has already voted and approved the budget for the fiscal year. And now, to me, that budget has to be honored. So it really is that simple. The district is simply asking for access to the budget that was already approved for it to spend. So not to spend more, just to spend what was approved and communicated. So ideally, this will get fixed by the voters on the 2024 ballot. And it does need a permanent fix for multiple reasons, but most glaringly, the enormous growth that Arizona has seen since the 1980s. And as Ms. Bruner mentioned, the fact that when the AEL calculation was set, the Prop 301 was originally excluded, and it no longer is. So as a board member, I will advocate for a ballot measure for the AEL in 2024 and work to educate our community on why it's needed. Basically, because I have an issue with being given a budget and then having that budget taken away. So hopefully the board and the district are working to go ahead and, get the AEL limit lifted now rather than waiting until the spring. But if it isn't lifted, I would speak with the community about the importance of honoring the budget that the district was given to work with by the state legislature. So in my opinion, it really does boil down to that community communication issue, because when the public understands that the AEL overrides the budget given to the district by the state legislature, and then that same legislature can override the AEL to allow the district access to the money that they were already supposed to have access to, it becomes clear that it's really more of a process issue than a constitutional issue, and that school districts should be able to trust the budgets given to them by the state. So I do believe as a board member, our time should be spent where we can affect the most change, which I feel is actually best done at the community level. So my main goal would be to communicate and educate the community so they can communicate with their legislators, as I feel that will be the key to lasting change. But I would be willing to advocate at the state level.
Thank you.
All right, Chandler families, teachers, and staff are struggling with the rising prices of housing. How could the school board help mitigate this problem? And do you commit to working with us to explore options for creating affordable teacher housing? Ms. Bruner?
Absolutely. This is extremely important. As we heard from someone sharing earlier, it can be a challenge to live in Chandler or Gilbert or the little sliver of Queen Creek as well for our district. Everything keeps shifting further away from the center of town when it comes to new builds and the more affordable builds. And so people keep having to move further and further away from Chandler to be able to afford a healthy living environment for their families. So there's two ways to address this. One is for the salaries of the employees to be increased, of course, and we've kind of already addressed this in some of the previous questions. And we need to maximize how many what we spend our dollars on related to salaries as much as possible. And I believe Chandler is pretty successful at that. And we have a very high rate of classroom spending compared to other school districts. So that helps. But there's still obviously the other issues as it relates to the funding that you get from the state. So as much as you are able to within the budget you are given from the school board, obviously you want to maximize that so that because the people in the classrooms and the people driving our children and the people serving them food, they are all vital to a welcoming, healthy environment for our kids. The other way is to look at other sources of funding. Like I've been pushing for a grant writer for a long time in the district, and we're working towards that right now. Community supports There are housing programs like Teacher Next Door, but we really do need to improve those. And I have spoken with the superintendent about possibilities with reallocation of property that we have, and if there's a way to possibly create housing from that. And that's something we'd have to look at our group that we have right now meeting on reallocating property.
Thank you, Ms. Bruner. Ms. Serrano.
So as Ms. Tanya noted tonight, the cost of living in Chandler is amongst the highest in Arizona. Potential entry-level talent interested in joining CUSD along with our current workforce have some very serious considerations to make in this regard. I believe it is a responsibility we owe to our school communities to work in concert with city, state, and federal to mitigate this grand challenge, coordinating and working towards affordable housing grants, subsidies, loan programs, and other creative routes to ensure our teachers and other workers have accessibility to local housing is critical. We must foster our school communities and include our teachers and their families within them. CUSD is worried about enrollment rates and attracting teachers right now. Guaranteeing affordable housing can and will attract educators and their families, which can positively contribute to student enrollment. So yes, I am absolutely committed to working with CEA to explore all options for creating more affordable teacher housing in our community. Easing the burden of high rent costs would increase Chandler's attractiveness to potential teaching recruits, retainment, and could eventually lead to a decrease in class sizes and an overall improvement in the quality of the education we're able to offer in CUSD.
Thank you, Ms. Serrano. Mr. Roars.
There we go. The housing thing here really has two aspects to it. One is the construction of new units, which I don't think the district should be building housing. I think that's not something that we should get involved in. It's more of a city of Chandler issue. Second part is the funding part of it. And this comes down to actually just money. And here's my concern with this, is that if you offer this to teachers, then you obligated to also look at it, offering it to other CUSD staff. And we talked about the support staff. Do you do it to bus drivers as incentives so they're locally? And then after that, well, we have a shortage of police officers too. So do you offer it to them and to first responders as well? We have a shortage of nurses. Should we offer it to them as well here in the city and other healthcare professionals? This is a slippery slope where we could wind up having committed to thousands of people with subsidized housing. So I think we better look at this very, very carefully. I'm not so sure that Chandler has a problem getting teachers. It's hired 350 new teachers because it's a good place to work. Other districts have very, very serious problems for various reasons, but Chandler still remains a good employment location for teachers that want to teach in a good district. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gala.
Yes, sorry. So I'm all for creative solutions for keeping our teachers living in and being a part of our community. It's my understanding that currently there are laws around subsidized teacher housing, and that right now subsidized teacher housing is only allowed in rural areas, on the reservation, or on military bases. So this would have to go far beyond just the school board. So for immediate mitigation, I would refer back to my answer to the first question and look for ways to adequately compensate the teachers for the work that they do. But looking towards the future, I'd be excited to work with city leadership and other stakeholders to see what could be done to keep our teachers in Chandler, because what better community member than a teacher?
Thank you. Ms. Estes. Microphone.
There we go. The average cost of apartment housing in Chandler as of August 31st, 2022 is $1,345 for a studio, $1,674 for one bedroom, $2,012 for 2 bedrooms and $24.91 for 3 bedrooms. The average cost of a mortgage is around $1,400, could be more, probably a lot more. This cost of housing, especially for a beginning instructor, indicates a very real need for affordable housing options for CUSD teachers. As a board member, I would be pleased to work with any entity whose goal would be affordable housing. There are communities that have entered into intergovernmental agreements, as well as partnerships with developers, nonprofits, and tech startups. I believe CUSD Governing Board and CEA, in collaboration with the City of Chandler and private groups, could develop a strategy to alleviate the cost of housing, thus enticing teachers to stay with and come to CUSD.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Students, we're going to move on to the 4th question. Students face mental health issues, financial challenges, unstable family and social dynamics, and many other problems that affect their ability to learn and thrive. As a board member, what programs would you promote to help ensure that students have the support that they need? And I'll get my list up. We'll start with Ms. Serrano, please. There you go.
Thank you.
You're
Well,
welcome.
first, I'd like to acknowledge that we just lost yet another recent CUSD alum to death by suicide. Our kids and families are suffering. Prioritizing and pushing academics alone is clearly not the answer. One of my main issues as your candidate for CUSD is supporting the implementation of whole child learning. This includes social, emotional, and mental health in addition to academics. Given the current pandemic and turbulent last few years, our students return to school with a high priority put on catching up academically. But we have now been witnessing the failure of recognizing the need our students have had in catching up emotionally. Our students experienced a variety of challenging situations, including working, becoming primary caretakers, grieving family members and friends lost, experiencing disconnectedness, becoming unsheltered, and more. We have seen our students consistently advocating for themselves and their needs at board meetings. We clearly must do better in listening to our students and letting them help guide our direction in addressing their mental health needs. Our students want to feel heard and contribute to solutions. I proudly hosted a roundtable with current students where I listened and learned about their experiences, those of their peers, and how they would like to see next steps go. One common theme that was shared amongst all representatives was their need for representation. They would like to see the creation of a student advisory role to speak on behalf of their peers and shine light on their perspective and view of board decisions. They would also like to have better dialogue with the board outside of scheduled school board meetings to carry better discussion. Students know their situation best, and I stand with promoting this support.
Thank you. Mr. Roars.
Yes, what you're referring to are all social issues. And I understand that the district is getting farther and farther involved with this. I don't know if we're being asked to do more than we can really do as a district. Typically, these issues have been cared for by the county, which does an awful lot, which we should rely on the city, but also the community, particularly the faith-based community as well. I think we need to utilize those resources instead of trying to reinvent the wheel for these kids. We do have a health center, which is great. We provide a lot of free meals to kids as well for the issue of food insecurity. But I did notice while I was in the schools, a lot of that food gets thrown out, which is very, very disappointing. The kind of meals that they give them, while they're very nutritious, not very appealing to the kids. So we need to address that. As far as the mental health issue, my biggest concern is really trying to understand what the causes of this mental health epidemic, I guess it is. There's a lot of speculation, but I think if we really want to solve this, we need to have a much better understanding what's causing it. Kids are obviously under a lot of stress. Now, is this stress because of the social issues that we're pushing on them? I don't know, but I think that needs to be addressed. And from that standpoint, you know, I don't think we're really doing enough to really understand what the issues are here. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Ms. Gala.
Yes. So as a district, we have a lot of current programs that are fantastic and working. So especially those in partnership with the Care Center, I would want to look to create more regional programming for the southern part of our district as well. So ideally, we could look to work with other nonprofit agencies like ICANN, Community Bridges, Not My Kid, or Teen Lifeline to partner and offer a satellite center similar to the Care Center. We also need to look at increasing our parent offerings. Educating the parents on the challenges today's youth are facing is a key component to ensuring mental health issues are recognized and addressed. I would also, like Patty said, I would advocate for a youth school safety and wellness commission that included upper elementary, junior high, and high school students. I hear from my kids and their friends that they just don't feel listened to by adults. They just went through a really rough 2 years, and we need to start listening to them. Finally, for our lower elementary children, I'm a huge advocate for free play. Children learn so much socially and developmentally through free play, and it puts them in a mindset ready to learn. So whether that looks like more recess or more projects that allow for a creativity and play, we need to make play a priority for our early elementary students, especially considering they just had 2 years where they weren't playing in large groups. So that's another way that I would advocate for their mental health as well.
Thank you. Ms. Estes.
I believe CUSD is on a path to improve support for mental health needs for the many needs of CUSD students. But it is a long and winding road, and CUSD has yet to complete the journey. Over the past 5 years, CUSD has committed to improving mental health support through trained professionals, as evidenced by the commitment of $5 million set aside for student health services. These funds employ 92 counselors and 21 social workers. Other resources include mental health hotlines, student mental health clubs, ASU student mental health assistant opportunities, and training for staff to recognize students needing mental health support. As a potential board member, I am not yet ready to promote any specific programs to best support the mental health of all CUSD students. If elected, I would promote the need for ongoing evaluation and fine-tuning of mental health programs and services already in place. I would also encourage the study of and incorporation of research-based mental health programs designed to be supportive of the LGBTQ student community and parents of vulnerable children.
Thank you. Ms. Bruner.
Thank you for asking this question. It's vital. As a psychology teacher and a sponsor of a mental health club every day, I am definitely seeing the needs of students. I have been trying to push with the district to have an evidence-based, community-based program that's comprehensive, that includes community supports and ties to nonprofits and to our faith-based organizations that also have counseling supports, parenting education, which was started out of Hamilton and then has expanded out, but I think there's some room for growth in that as well. We need to expand our student clubs. They just have started in the last couple of years, and we need to make sure our junior high kids have opportunities with that as well. I think there also needs to be some revisions to our health courses. Health is required for high school students, and a small part of that is mental health, but I think we need to reevaluate what we have in that course and use evidence-based programming and curriculum for students there. Related to the financial needs, we do, as has been mentioned, we do have the care center, but we also have some social workers at some of the sites, and I'd love to hear from them more often what they think would make a bigger impact. Where do the resources need to go? The people who are actually delivering the services at our schools, like, let's get with those folks more often and find out what we can do. And I've also suggested partnering schools. So we'll see if we can get that going, where we would have schools that have more resources partner with schools that don't. And a few of them already are doing this organically. If we could help make that happen more often with some of our other sites, I think that'd be really helpful for our students in need. And I do think one other opportunity would be to have a system where we have volunteers that are sorry.
That's all right. Thank you. Your time is up. We'll go on to the last question.
This last question will be a yes or no answer only. If elected, do you commit to meeting with us within a month after the election to continue to discuss these and other important issues? Mr. Roars, you first.
Let me get unmuted here. Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I would actually insist on, I think we need to continually talk about this, not just one meeting, but continual meetings. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Scala.
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Estes.
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you. Ms. Brunner.
Yes.
Thank you. And Ms. Serrano.
Yes, you can count on us meeting before December 8th within the month. Looking forward to it.
Thank you very much. Okay. Next up,
Sorry,
we
I
have
was writing
Katie.
down notes